Mr. Turner had been living in his son's apartment for a year. Rick and his wife Ashley worked long and late hours, and on weekends they often went to visit friends or to do some part-time work, and the elderly man began to feel that they purposely tried to be at home less often, so as not to communicate with him, even though on those rare occasions when they all gathered around the communal table, everyone treated the elderly man with respect and kindness. Mr. Turner still felt like a burden. Such sentiments did not occur to Mr. Turner accidentally. Out of boredom, he met his neighbour, Mrs. Sanders, who lived on the first floor and was also already retired. They often took slow walks together in a nearby park and talked about life, shared their joys and experiences with each other. Mrs. Sanders said that she used to live in the countryside, but that her children had recently taken her away and sold the house, so she had to stay here. Then Mr. Turner thought for the first time that his situation was very similar to that of his neighbour, and began to listen more and more often to what she was saying. She complained that the children treated her like a small child. They were always dissatisfied with something, and that she very much regretted that she had sold the house and moved in with them. Mr. Turner had heard similar stories many times before, but now, imbued with Mrs. Sanders' story, he thought for the first time. No, he loved both his daughter-in-law and his son, who always helped him. But he began to notice that sometimes they were dissatisfied about something, discussed something behind his back, but were afraid to tell the truth to his face. Mr. Turner would never live in his son's family of his own free will. The fault was a tragic accident that left him no choice. The elderly man used to live in the village, where his son and his family visited several times a year with pleasure. He was retired and spent all day working in his garden, growing vegetables, taking care of flowers, making various furniture for the garden, and such a happy, by his standard life, ended instantly. One day he went to the sawmill to buy wood for the garden swing, and when he returned, he found, instead of a house, smouldering embers. It was found out later that the fire was caused by a short circuit of the old wiring in the house. It was a weekday. The neighbours were not at home, so they noticed the fire late, and when firefighters arrived, there was nothing to extinguish. Seeing what was left of his native house, Mr. Turner tiredly sank to the ground and wept bitterly. He had nothing left. Unable to withstand the shock, the old man lost consciousness. Neighbours called an ambulance, and as it turned out, just in time, as Mr. Turner had a stroke. In an instant, he went from an active, cheerful, mature man to a bedridden, elderly man. He lay staring at the ceiling all day long, wishing he had died there on the remains of his house. And he also felt very sorry for his son, because he had to take him home with him. His son's apartment was small, and he was placed in the room of his granddaughter, who was already in college and lived in the dormitory. When she was coming to visit her parents for the weekend, Mr. Turner felt even more ashamed and regretful that because of him the granddaughter didn't have her own room, and he suffered greatly from that. So passed 6 months. At first Mr. Turner just lay there and waited for the end to relieve everyone of their torment. But then suddenly he came to his senses. He began to move little by little, and little by little his health began to recover. After another 6 months, he began to walk a little, and one day he decided to talk to Rick and Ashley about something that had been bothering him for a long time. "Son, I don't want to live here anymore and bother you. Find me a nursing home, but only with a garden. I'm used to growing plants, so I'd do a little work there." "Well, I see that you are really getting better," laughed Rick, thinking that his father was just joking. But when he saw how serious he was even confused. Rick tried to explain to his father that he was welcome here. No one restricted anything. He could do whatever he wanted. Yes, of course, there was no garden, but he would definitely think of something with that too. But father did not calm down. "I said I want to go to a nursing home, and that's it." Ashley also tried to calm her father-in-law, but she failed. Then, so that Mr. Turner did not get nervous, they promised him that they would try to look for something, and at the time these conversations ceased. Since that evening, Mr. Turner had been walking around even more gloomy than usual. He noticed that his son's wife barely came home, explaining that they were too busy at work. He was saddened to think that they did not want to spend these last days with him, knowing that they would soon part. Mrs. Sanders, the neighbour, was spoiling his mood even more. Day after day she missed no opportunity to add fuel to the fire, warning Mr. Turner that nothing good could come of the children, and that even if they did not yet show their displeasure outwardly, they would soon show their true attitude. 4 months passed, and Mr. Turner could not stand it and started talking about the nursing home again. His son tried to avoid the conversation by saying that there was a suitable place, but that there was a long waiting list and that he had to wait. Deciding that they wanted to deceive him, Mr. Turner angrily warned that if they did not want to take him anywhere, he himself would go there, talk to the director, and get a place at least in the corridor. The man was determined to go himself and find out what kind of place it was, where it was so difficult to get. The next morning the son disappeared somewhere, and Ashley was acting kind of nervous, answering questions vaguely, and then she left for the store. All this seemed strange to the elderly man, and when Ashley returned with the purchases, Mr. Turner noticed a new set of bed linen in her bag, and it upset him very much. He decided that they were preparing for his departure, since they even decided to change the sheets after it. Mr. Turner felt like an unnecessary old man, and decided to go outside and get some fresh air. As he barely stepped out of the door, the man saw his son, who had just arrived in the car. With a smile on his face, Rick happily told his father that he had finally arranged everything, and now all that was left was to pack his things. Mr. Turner did not know whether to rejoice or to cry. Though he had received what he had asked for, he felt sad at heart. The elderly man's belongings were few, almost all burned in the fire, so he packed quickly. At the end, he dropped in to say goodbye to Mrs. Sanders, his neighbour, who triumphantly realized that she had been right about ungrateful children once again. Mr. Turner and his son and daughter-in-law drove in silence. The elderly man tried to imagine the place where they were taking him to, and was most worried whether there would be a garden or not. Then he remembered his burnt-out home, and his throat treacherously tingled with approaching tears. To distract himself, he leaned against the window and suddenly realized that for some reason they were going in the direction of his village. He thought he was imagining things, but when the car drove a painfully familiar street, he became alert. Just then they drove into some gate. The son jumped out of the car and opened the door in front of his father. Mr. Turner looked around and, stunned, could not utter a word. It was his land, only with a new house. Rick and Ashley looked at the elderly father contentedly. Meanwhile, he went into the house and clutched his heart with joy. The house, though small, had everything he needed: heating, running water, a full kitchen, and a huge summer veranda. The work was not yet finished, but even now it was much better than in the burnt-out old house. Mr. Turner was so moved that he could no longer hold back his tears. He was also terribly ashamed that he had thought so poorly of his son and his wife. His son, meanwhile, was telling how they had managed to carry out their plan. It turns out that they began construction immediately after the fire, and they did some work themselves to save money. That was why they so often, allegedly, stayed late at work. But in fact they hurried to finish the construction as soon as possible. And of course they were not looking for any nursing home, and they did not say anything to the father because they wanted to surprise him. They would have done everything in time, but the last conversation with him messed up all the plans, and they had to rush him here without finishing some work. And then the daughter-in-law pulled out the very bedding that Mr. Turner had already seen. It turned out that she had gone to the store to buy the last little things needed for the house: dishes, towels, linens. The old man kept crying and confessed that he had thought ill of the children all this time. He was very ashamed and apologized to them. He also confessed that he would never have thought of such a thing if it had not been for the neighbour on the first floor and her stories about her difficult life with the children. "Who is this neighbour, Mrs. Sanders?" laughed the son. "Do you know that she's not all right in the head? Probably not enough attention, so she makes up all sorts of tall tales and tells everyone. In fact, she's lived her whole life in the city, in this very apartment, ever since the building was built, and no one's abused her." "Wow, I was so wrong," said Mr. Turner, and thought about it. He always knew he had good children, but he allowed himself to doubt them because of the words of some mad woman, and he decided that from now on he would think with his head alone. But the children were not offended. They assured their father that they were always ready to see him at their home, and if necessary, they would be happy to take him in and would never hurt him.